Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mark Western, and I'm an attorney with the Fremstead Law Firm, which has been a proud member of the Fargo-Moorhead-West Fargo Chamber of Commerce since its inception 10 years ago. Our office is focused on moving our clients' interest forward, but really, this is not a commercial for my law office, but instead, the people who are on show today are the candidates for the Fargo City Commission. On behalf of the Fargo-Moorhead-West Fargo Chamber of Commerce, Board of Directors, members, and staff, I would like to welcome you all, those of you who are listening over Facebook, over radio, over television. We're excited that you're with us today. Thank you also to all of our candidates for being here today, as well as your willingness to serve. Over the last 8 years, the Chamber of Commerce has gotten more involved in public policy issues, both through advocacy and education. The Chamber advocates on issues on behalf of our members and tries to educate on issues and candidates as we are doing today. The Chamber, however, does not endorse any candidates or grade any elected officials. What we're going to do for the forum or debate today is something a little bit different, and we want to be able to explain that both to our candidates and our audience tuning in from wherever. In the interest of time, we are going to be using a timed question and answer format, and we are going to allow each candidate up to 1 minute for opening remarks before moving to 1-minute responses to our pre-written questions. We have decided, however, not to have every candidate answer every question in the interest so that our candidates can get a little bit more in depth on the issues that are important to Chamber members and to you who are here today. And so what we will be doing is we will be having candidates answer questions 4 at a time. Our first question, for example, will go to candidates Boyd, Flackel, Gehrig, and Maddock-Johnson. Our next question would go to candidates Pepcorn, Preston, Tweeden, and Williams, and so forth, in the interest that each candidate will be able to answer several questions, and if a candidate is interested in a particular issue or question, they can also cover that issue in closing remarks. Note cards and pens have been provided to audience members for your questions, which will be brought up to me, and Chamber staff is stationed around the room to collect the questions. Following my questions and audience questions, as I say, we will be closing with final statements from each candidate. We wish the best of luck to all candidates. Let's begin. And so with that, we will start with opening remarks from our candidates, going alphabetically, starting with Linda Boyd. Welcome.
Thank you very much, and thank you for hosting this forum. Thanks to the Chamber and all of its members. I'm Linda Boyd. I've served on the City Commission once before, and I'm currently finishing my second term on the Fargo School Board. I frankly love Fargo. I used to come to Fargo kind of starry-eyed when I was a kid growing up in Jamestown. This was kind of the fancy place to come. And I've been thrilled to live here and to help shape this into the kind of community that we all want to live in. I think we're known for excellence in so many areas, excellence in education, quality of life. We're regional centers for so many things, healthcare and other things. And I think many years of wise decision-making have made that possible. I think we need to keep moving Fargo forward in many areas, including making sure Fargo works for everyone and quality of life, as well as housing and being a welcoming community.
Thank you, Linda. Let's hear from Tim Flackel.
Thank you. I'm Tim Flackel. I have lived in Fargo all of my adult life. Earlier, I grew up in Forbes, North Dakota, in the agriculture and minerals industry, which I still am involved in. I previously worked in private business as general manager and vice president of the Redhawks, and right now I serve as the Tri-College provost. I bring a diverse set of experiences, including the Senate, where I served as chair of the Senate Education Committee, Agriculture Committees, and Natural Resources Committee. I've earned a 98% voting record with the state chamber, to be clear, state chamber, not the local, and sponsored successful legislation which has reduced property taxes by $3 billion to date. I think I can be a can-do commissioner that has 5 major points on my to-do list, including lowering taxes and specials, improving infrastructure, enhancing safety and safe neighborhoods, economic development, smart growth, and my goal is simple: to make Fargo a better place to work, live, play, do business, earn a living, and retire to.
Thank you, Tim. Let's hear from Commissioner Tony Gehrig.
Hi, my name is Tony Gehrig. I am currently a Fargo City Commissioner. Grew up in Fargo, graduated from the Fargo Catholic Schools Network, NDSU. While still in high school, I joined the Air National Guard. I've been a Guard member now for 16 years, currently serving as a pilot with the 119th Wing here in Fargo. My wife is a lawyer here in Fargo with Allland Law Firm, and I have a 5-year-old son who will be attending preschool next year, which makes me feel a little bit old. But my voting record as a commissioner has been extremely clear. I've been unafraid to vote no against things that I believe are wasteful, often alone in those no votes. I believe that we need to put the needs of the city of Fargo over the wants of the other commissioners. And if we can do that, we can lower property taxes and special assessments and have all the things that we need that make Fargo a great city to live in. Some of those needs include a new fire station in South Fargo. We need to finish inner-city flood protection. We need to finish our expansion of the water plant and the sewer plant. Some of those wants that we're going to reject are things like the Performing Arts Center and the Convention Center. And again, I've been a lone voice in some of those things, and I appreciate your vote. Actually, you can vote today if you like after the debate. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. On to Liz Maddock Johnson.
Well, I'm Liz Maddock Johnson, and if Tony feels old, I feel old. I have a senior in college that just graduated, a senior in high school, another that's going to graduate from college next year, and a senior at South next year, so I'll do it again. I grew up here in Fargo. I was at the Horseman Roosevelt area, went to Ben Franklin, Fargo North, and then from there went to MSUM and the U of M. We moved to Texas, lived there for 10 years. After 4 kids, moved back and thought family would be great to be around. My motivation for running for city commission is to be a compassionate listener, continuing to promote a community which values diversity, engaging citizens in the decision making, and for equal treatment and opportunity in housing, the workplace, and their rights. I feel I bring a lot to the table as working as an educator for the last 25 years. And again, you can vote today.
Thank you, Ms. Maddock Johnson. On to Commissioner Dave Pepcorn.
I'm currently serving as Deputy Mayor for the City of Fargo. I'm born and raised in Fargo. I went to Washington Elementary, Ben Franklin Junior High School, graduated from Fargo North in 1979. I was a captain of the North Dakota State football team in 1983. I graduated from NDSU in 84. I've been a small business owner my entire career. True Green was my business. I still own the building in downtown where I have my office. My wife Vicki was a teacher before. We have two boys, Alex, who graduated from Concordia 2 years ago, and my son Will, who just graduated from Fargo North on Sunday, and he'll be attending the Vocational Training Center starting in a week after he talked us into getting a week break to go to the lake. So I love serving as a city commissioner. I don't mind asking questions. I stand up for the working class. I stand up for the taxpayer. This is a great city. We have a very bright future. I hear a lot of people talking about managing the decline and what we need to, we have so many great things going on. And I look forward to your vote on June 12th and look forward to being a leader in that. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Pepcorn. Now for Arlette Preston.
Good afternoon. I'm Arlette Preston. I grew up about 60 miles north of here in Mayville, Portland. Been living in Fargo for probably around the last 42 years or so. I also served on the City Commission from 92 to 2000. During that time, we rewrote the Land Development Code and actually initiated the first downtown redevelopment plan. From that, the Renaissance Zone evolved. After leaving the City Commission, I started my own business, Homestead Senior Care, and I've been operating that for the last 14 years. It's a 24/7 type of business, so any of you, if any of you have had the challenge of finding employees for 24-hour per day, it's a challenge. It's definitely a challenge. Too many businesses are currently facing that challenge of finding enough employees. It's impeding our growth. So. Truly, workforce development is a priority. City Commission can help by communicating an open, welcoming approach and also in developing workforce housing.
Thank you,
I'll
Ms.
work on
Preston.
these.
Our next candidate is Lenny Tweeden.
Lifelong resident of Fargo. I'm going to go right to a issue. I support a change of form of government to a council form of government of 10 members. Currently, the commission is 5 members with 3 majority vote. which means 3 people can decide a decision that affects 120,000 people. Council form of government is a government where people are elected from wards, and the whole city has representation. At one point in the 1970s, the mayor and the 4 commissioners all lived on the north side of Fargo. So that's my issue.
Thank you, Mr. Tweeden. And finally, let's hear from Michael Williams.
Thanks, everybody. This is a good turnout. We started early voting already, and I hope everybody gets out to vote. Whether you vote for me or not, we need big voter turnout. So thanks for showing up, and shows that, you know, we've got 9 contenders here for the city commission. It shows that we've got a lot of people that are community-oriented, that want to share their ideas and help the community, and I just hope that all of us work together to continue to share, because we've learned from each other just during these discussions. So, yeah, my name's Mike Williams, and I first got involved as an activist. I started some initiated measures. I saw that sales tax was a huge opportunity, and we needed to preserve it for the highest values. My background's in construction, and 2% for infrastructure for sales tax was a critical goal that I had. My brother worked down in Sioux Falls. They had 2% for infrastructure. So the idea then is to make best use of existing resources, consult the people, and make the best ideas win.
Thank you very much, all candidates. Let's move on to the first question, and as I said under our format, it will be answered by Linda Boyd, Tim Flackel, Tony Gehrig, and Liz Maddock Johnson. Question number 1. Donald Trump is not running for mayor of Fargo or its city commission, but his pronouncements on immigration have captured international attention. As a city that has a growing population of new Americans, should Fargo become a sanctuary city? Ms. Boyd.
I did not see that coming. Sanctuary city. As I understand it, first of all, I think the size of Fargo, that won't be an issue, but the concept behind that is to make it safe for people who may not be citizens to feel comfortable approaching police. And the reason that some of these cities are going towards that is that the police departments themselves have found that it actually helps cut crime. You don't have unreported crimes. But here in Fargo, as you say, that's maybe not our issue in terms of how it is in major metropolitan areas, but I believe that Fargo has an incredibly progressive and welcoming police department that has various liaison officers, including a liaison officer for the New American community, as well as working very closely with the schools and with neighborhoods, and to me, that's a positive approach.
Thank you, Ms. Boyd. Tim Flackel.
We should not become a sanctuary city. However, those that do come here, we should do what we can to make sure that they are successful, whether it's working with the schools and the English language learner programs or other programs we can provide. Because as an example, the students then go on and teach their parents how to speak and communicate better, and it's very important. One of the things that's really helped a lot as far as embracing new Americans too is the various markets that are out there for people. But the reality is, and it's been talked about a lot, that we on average have brought in about 261 new Americans a year because we have very strong and diverse services in the Fargo area. But as far as being a sanctuary city and all that entails, no.
Tony Gehrig.
No, we should not become a sanctuary city, but we as a city of Fargo do a lot of great things and to be a welcoming community. We do have outreach. We have officers that do nothing more than outreach to people in the community, which I think was a great initiative that we started. We have fantastic schools that are welcoming for new Americans. ELL, things like that do help, but we also have a great community. People want to welcome new people, and we have jobs. We have a ton of jobs available, and that's part of being a member of the community, feeling like you fit in, having good housing available, having good jobs available, and having a welcome community where you can be educated and feel productive is more important, I think, than being a sanctuary city.
Liz Maddock Johnson.
Well, I wasn't expecting that either. And I think just the size of Fargo would tend to put us out of being a sanctuary city. But I wanted to talk just briefly about how Fargo deals with new American families coming in. From working in the schools, I know, especially at some of our lower socioeconomic schools, there's a larger population of new Americans. And at those schools, the school and the police force work very closely together on different programs to be able to build relational levels for these families and for the students, to give them an opportunity to be able to participate in the summer so that they're not all running around the neighborhood. But those police play an important role in welcoming these new families. But one of the things, too, I think we need to take a look at is housing. We need to take a look at what are we doing with our neighborhoods. We have very segregated neighborhoods, and the housing needs to change in order for us to be more welcoming.
Thank you. Let's move on to question number 2, and this will be answered by Commissioner Pepcorn, Ms. Preston, Mr. Tweeden, and Mr. Williams. It seems that the most talked about topic of this campaign is special assessments. Some candidates have created plans to restructure or do away with special assessments entirely. Simply put, what is your position? And just as importantly, how does your position on assessments affect the business community in Fargo?
Well, I'm very pleased. I got a phone call today from Ivan Savageau, and so Dan's sitting in the back of the room, and Ivan was living on North Broadway, and he was one of the main driving forces in our change. And so I'm very pleased the commission, we voted in favor of returning to the old system. And so he was at about $24,000, and now it's about $4,000. And so he was very happy. I do think there's still some things we need to address. The main thing is the arterials are what is affecting special assessments. And that is, we basically are going to take action on that after the election. But I will support that because the arterials, especially in North Fargo, they're compressed, and that's what's increasing the specials. I do think the special assessment system is very good. I agree that there's some tinkering that we need to do, but to drastically throw it out, I think would be a big mistake. Thank you.
Ms. Preston.
Sorry.
Yeah, I agree. Throwing it out would not be a good idea. It would create a lot of chaos and basically overturn the apple cart. So we don't want to do that. However, I do think there is some work that needs to be done. We have, over the years, I think, gotten a little bit too reliant on special assessments. And right now, we're struggling with a diversion with that special assessment sitting out there as a possibility yet. So we're pretty maxed out in the community on specials. So taking a look at it, and the mayor has definitely indicated that that's going to happen once the election is passed. Would definitely want to take a look at the entire funding structure and see what can be done to lessen the load.
Mr. Tweeden.
I support what the commission did recently, and I think one of the areas is that new development, we need to look at encouraging redevelopment of the central business section and encourage, instead of pushing the city out, revitalizing the downtown area where with existing structure. As far as new development, I think that some of the costs should be put into the price of a new home, and that should be done by the developers.
Michael Williams.
Hi. Yeah, special assessments are high, and there's a reason for that, and part of it is land use matters. So I've been a big proponent of using the infrastructure that we have in place. Since 1960, we've grown from 8 sections to 54 sections. That is 2.5 times the rate of our population growth. So we went from 10 people per acre to now 3.5 people per acre. It would be like having a section of land and only planting 1/3 of it. that's what you get for a return. So we need to be thinking about what's the reason for these high special assessments. The reason that the city voted to change this formula is because the construction cost inflation is higher than the regular rate of inflation, and at the time there was there wasn't enough contractors to do the work. It was the wrong decision, but it actually was a wake-up call that we can't just continue to finance infrastructure for development into greenfields when we don't need more land. We need to fill in the areas where we've made the investment with infrastructure. That will help us to add value to our city.
Thank you. And now for the next question, we're going to start with Tim Flackel and move towards Gehrig, Maddock Johnson, and Pepcorn, so then Ms. Boyd and Mr. Pepcorn don't have to go first off every time. And also, this is a time to remind individuals who are here at the Fargo City Commission chambers, if you have any questions, there are 3x5 cards and writing instruments about the chamber and employees of the chamber who are happy to take your questions, then bring them up to me. Question number 3, we're starting with Tim Flackel. The city of Fargo doesn't seem much closer to having a true convention center than it was 2 years ago or 4 years ago. There's been some talk about having a Metropolitan Fine Arts Performance Center, but it has remained just that, talk. 3-part question. Number 1, convention center or performance hall? Number 2, location. Number 3, high priority, low priority, not a priority. Tim Flackel.
And we're going to have trouble on time on these for everyone, but I've done a survey that included that question, and they're about a dead heat as far as the people are talking. But what we need to do is we need an entrepreneurial style, particularly, I'll start first with the Performing Arts Center. What we did with the Newman Outdoor Field is we had a combination of naming rights, not only for the building, but for the room spaces. We did VIP seat licenses, we did suites, we do ticket surcharge, but if we can do that like we did at the Red Hawks where we paid that off and make it work that way. Now that's more designed for the people within the community. The convention center will bring in new dollars into the community, and I think there are private-public partnerships that are sitting out there chomping at the bit to make that happen. But every year we go by and don't take action one way or the other, it drives up the cost, and that's a big problem. But we, if we want to do this, can do this from an entrepreneurial standpoint with dollars that are both public and private that will repay it over time.
Thank you.
Costing the taxpayer no additional dollars.
On to Tony Gehrig.
Yeah, this goes right into that needs versus wants type of deal. We have a sewer plant that we're going to have to revamp. It's going to cost $110 million or more. The water plant was $110 million. We have a multi-million-dollar fire station we need. We have flood protection. That's a high priority for some people. We have, high special assessments. We have high taxes as it is. We need to have the things that are required for the city before we have the wants of some people. A convention center is $120 million, performing arts $60 million, and it goes up, as Tim said, every year that we don't build it. We don't have that money. We have that money for other things. If we don't have that money, we either need to raise taxes or to go into debt to do that. Both of those are bad ideas. So I'm the person that's going to be in the room saying, look, those are great things. A performing arts center would be fantastic. Convention center, great. But, I like when my toilet flushes, and when I turn the water on, water comes out that I can drink. And if my house has a problem with a fireman's going to show up. Let's do those things first.
On to Liz Maddock Johnson.
Well, I'll go backwards. I think it's a low priority right now. As far as location, I think a lot of the things that we're talking about for the city of Fargo tend to just everyone centering on downtown Fargo, and which is great, except I think there are a few places in town that could maybe revitalize those areas if we thought about location a little bit more. And then as far as a convention center, performance center, I think they would add to the richness that we have already in the community for our performing arts and our arts that we have. But I do think there are a few other priorities that are higher than that right now that we need to take a look at, and one would be the flood protection. And the second would be our neighborhoods and investing in our existing and established neighborhoods, because those really need a close look at how are we going to move them into the future and to be able to help those neighborhoods because that's the heart of the success of the future of Fargo.
On to Dave Pepcorn.
All right, away we go. So I'm going to be the co-chair of the committee. It's a great opportunity. It'll be an economic engine. The Civic Center needs a lot of work, and we've already done the research. We own the land. What we have to do, it's going to be a collaboration with private donors and the city. It's going to be fantastic. There will be no new taxes. Every time you go to an event, there will be 250 events a year. Every time there's an event at the Civic Center, every restaurant, every bar, people go down there to eat and drink and walk to the events, so it'll be great. The one suggestion I would have is, I think the convention center should be in Moorhead, where the Moorhead Center Mall is. I think that would be a great opportunity. You basically have an empty building. The other thing, my commitment to you is, this thing will never lose money. It will be just like the Fargo Dome. You have to have a budget that you can stick to that will break even at worst. And it will the economic impact of this thing will be phenomenal. And the reason that you have to keep investing in downtown is that's what makes us unique. The downtown.
Thank you, Commissioner Pepcorn.
Thank you.
Let's move to our next question. This will be answered by Ms. Preston, Mr. Tweeden, Mr. Williams, and then back to Ms. Boyd. The flood diversion has been an ongoing project to provide permanent flood protection, and now another 2 years have gone by, and due to various exigencies and circumstances, the cost is projected to increase. There is no plan upon which the region really agrees. Do you support the diversion, and who should pay for it? Ms. Preston.
Well, I certainly support moving forward with the diversion. It's a project that's at least partially on the books, and we do need to wait, however, until all of the legal processes have been exhausted. And if we jump the gun, like we did for at least a small portion of it, we end up trying to correct that mistake. So we have to wait until the courts make their final decision. As I understand, there will be a plan coming out from that process, and so we will have a plan, hopefully, that will move forward. You're right, the cost has increased, and that's what makes me a little bit nervous. I really hope that we can do this without tapping into special assessments. We're all paying for it. The county sales tax revenue that was put in place a few years back is the source of that funding, so hopefully we can do it without specials, and that's my priority.
Mr. Tweeden.
I agree with most of what Arlette just said. I also think, though, that we need to look to our members of Congress for additional support. I remember back when Burdick was in Congress, and he used to bring home the bacon, and we need Congress to do that again.
Michael Williams.
Thanks. We don't have to wait for flood protection. We need to finish our in-town flood protection while we continue to work on the diversion and comprehensive water management. Water supply is equally important, so we are not far from certified flood protection. Especially, we can do quadrants. So like this downtown sector, this is the most valuable area that we have per square foot, and now with this flood wall, when we complete that and tie into the railroad tracks in a certifiable manner, we'll be able to tell developers when they want to come in and finish the half-done project that we have, you are certified for flood protection. So that's how we can leverage. In the meantime, we need to keep working towards full-term diversion.
Very good. Let us move to the next question. Oh, my goodness sakes. Thank you, Ms. Boyd. Please.
Thank you. I certainly support the diversion as well as the pieces of the diversion that are already in place and getting built throughout town. The delays have certainly made the cost increase. A big portion of that funding is multi-decade sales tax. And while sales taxes are flat right now, they certainly won't be forever. But one option that we could look at that other cities in North Dakota have done would be to remove the sales tax cap so that all of those sales taxes spent in Fargo stay in Fargo. Right now, you can get a rebate on any sales taxes you pay on an item over $25. So places like Watford City right now are undergoing a public vote to remove that cap. So that's one option to make sure that we won't have to fall back on special assessments, that people who actually use all the facilities in our community help pay for it, as well as making sure that the federal and state shares remain what was pledged and what was budgeted for. So this is a long-term commitment to keep in front of our legislators and delegation.
Thank you, Ms. Boyd, and my apologies for skipping over you inadvertently.
Okay.
I'm glad that the hook has not come out as of yet. Let's move to question number 5. This is going to go to Commissioner Gehrig, Ms. Maddock-Johnson, Commissioner Pepcorn, and Ms. Preston. Congratulations. You've been elected to the City Commission. It's now June 6th, 2022. How is Fargo different? How did you get there? What's your vision for changing this city? Go.
My vision for the city is a city that is, representative of the people and giving the people the opportunity to drive the boat, as it were, and tell us what they want the city to look like. Less of a top-down push about here's where you should spend your money, here's where the incentives go, here's where you should build your home, here's where you shouldn't, and allow the market to drive a lot of those things. The things I'll be continuing to push for are lower tax burdens for the people, which will allow them that greater liberty. So I've obviously already put out a plan to end special assessments. Since becoming commissioner, property tax of mills have gone down by 12%. In my first 100 days in office, the new city hall went down in price by nearly $10 million. These are all positives for the community, for the people of Fargo, and I'll continue to push for those things. I'll continue to be a voice for the people, not be afraid to vote no when I feel like the people are not being representative. And when we talk about tinkering around the edges for special assessments and making small changes, I know these candidates have heard, just like I have, loud and clear that people are fed up with this, and that going from 50-50 to 70-30, which is the old plan, is the fix. It is not the fix, and we have heard that.
Thank you, Commissioner Gehrig. Ms. Maddock-Johnson.
All right. Well, I think in 2022, we'll have, my vision is that our fair, affordable housing will be addressed, especially in our neighborhoods, the infill, and figuring how we can get more of our 25 to 40-year-old individuals to be able to afford housing. The second is, along with that affordable housing, is addressing the 31% that are renters. And we need to be able to have a mix of rental and moving toward home ownership. The other is that it's a more inclusive community, and by that I mean that we have allowed our city to be better at networking our neighborhoods, because that's where families and that's where anyone coming to our city finds where they belong.
Commissioner Pepcorn.
First of all, the new performance center would be completed, and Linda's Symphony would be performing in there, so that would be a good thing. The other thing that would be happening is we have so much potential for increased revenue with our utilities, selling water to West Fargo and wastewater to Horace. The potential there is we should be doing the whole county, both water and wastewater, and also Moorhead. And so if we did that, we could use that revenue either to reduce specials or eliminate specials. There's lots of potential things. I think the exciting thing is not to talk about managing the decline of Fargo, but to talk about, I'm telling you, we should be out recruiting Google, Amazon, all these big corporations. We have Microsoft. We have the second largest campus in the nation, and we aren't leveraging that. And we have huge competitive advantages with the right across the river. And so we should be out every day recruiting businesses, banks, tech, all those things, and getting them to come to Fargo. And if I was elected, that's what we'd be doing all day, every day.
Thank you. Ms. Preston.
I think I could probably describe it most accurately in that we would be a creative city. That means we would use creativity in attracting a workforce. We would have amenities and services that would be attractive to the young professional. We would be using creative problem solving with our infrastructure needs, and also in our development. Our development right now, and somebody else mentioned that earlier, is a sprawling type of development. We need to really start to pull in and understand how development is driving neighborhoods. which again, neighborhoods being the core of a community, being able to have a good sense of neighborhood in the city would be terrifically important. So being creative in how we are developing as we move forward would be a major issue.
Thank you. And now let's move on to some questions from our audience. And the first one is going to be answered by Mr. Tweeden, Mr. Williams, Ms. Boyd, and Mr. Flackel. Fargo is surrounded by several other towns, Moorhead, West Fargo, Dilworth, and others. There is a lot of competition around us. How can Fargo keep competitive? Mr. Tweeden.
I see us as one community. I see us as working together. I think working together makes us stronger. So I don't see us as being separate. So,
Mr. Williams.
Yeah, that's why we have the Fargo Moorhead West Fargo. And you can, we're right side.
We need to be able to attract
and has it done any damage to Fargo's reputation? Go ahead.
Well, there's good and bad to that. And I would say that we have both. And I think one of the things, and one of the very first forums that I was in, I thought a good idea for the commission would be able to look at the liquor license that have been given to downtown. What we promote as a city is reflected in the activities that we promote. So when we have the pub crawl and we have the cork and canvas, and I've participated in the cork and canvas, and I've participated in many of the different wine and cheese tastings that we've had downtown. But I think we need to take a look at how are we promoting the downtown area and what is important to what we value. And so I think we need to be more creative in what we put in our downtown. I think we have plenty of establishments for food and alcohol combined. And that would be my solution, is to take a look at what is existing now and where do we go.
Thank you. Commissioner Pepcorn.
I think a lot of those news stories that talk about Fargo being the drunkest, and a lot of those per capita, they're manufactured polls and things like that. So a lot of them don't have credibility. However, some of these things where alcohol is involved in 50% of the accidents, that kind of stuff we definitely need to address. The main thing is our downtown is the entertainment district, and it's not just for Fargo, it's for our region. That is a great thing. But we have to send the message, and I think Uber and things like that are a great thing to make sure that we do not tolerate drinking and driving, and we need to make sure that we have enough law enforcement to make sure that people behave themselves. But this is where people want to come and have fun, and I think that's a good thing. Probably 20 years ago, while we were talking about before the Renaissance Zone, there was nothing going on in downtown Fargo. Well, then you didn't have to worry about the issue. We can return to that if that's what people want, but I would rather have this be the place to be. Thank you.
Thank you, and I had miscounted through my candidates. This question will be finished by Mr. Tweeden and not Mr. Williams. Please go ahead, Arlette Preston.
Well, I certainly think that, first of all, I live downtown, so let me put that disclaimer in there. And yes, we have a problem with some evenings, especially on the weekends, and when you have to step over things on Sunday morning, it's not a good environment. However, understanding that the downtown plan that just got written, one of the major emphasis there is residential development. So, at some point we have to figure out how do we balance the entertainment district of downtown and the residential area of downtown, and how do you mix those when they live side by side? And right now, I think it's a little bit out of balance. The density of liquor licenses downtown are really high, so that's one of the issues that needs to be addressed.
Thank you, Ms. Preston. Mr. Tweeden.
I lost my train of thought here. Recently, I was in Minneapolis on Hennepin Avenue, and last time I was there was in the 80s, and it was run down, and they have a lot of bars. And last fall, I was down to Hennepin Avenue, and they still have a lot of bars. But now they have a police officer on almost every corner. And it was a safe environment. I'm not saying that we need a police officer on every corner, but maybe one officer that walks up and down Broadway would reduce any problems that could develop.
Thank you. And now for our last question, it will go to Michael Williams, then Ms. Boyd, Mr. Flackel, and Mr. Gehrig, and then we'll have closing statements. The question is this: please describe a tough budget choice you have had to make in your personal or professional life. Mike Williams.
Sure. We bought one new car, and usually when I first started buying cars, I think I spent $200 for the first 5, and when they'd run out, I'd just leave them and go buy another one. but those weren't necessarily tough budget choices. But reality is you need to live well within your means. We do that at home. My wife and I bought a small house to begin with. It's been paid off for many years. We pay cash for cars. I think a good example is the library. Came up with an 18-month sales tax. Linda Boyd was there and Thomas Lane. 3 out of 5 of us put it on the ballot. That was a unique idea, dedicated sales tax, 18 months to pay for what turned out to be 2 new libraries and a branch. What that did is that was fully funded along with some donations before those buildings were complete. And that saves $800,000 a year not having to pay interest and bond for that. So that's an idea about how we can add more value, weighing opportunity costs for the same amount of money. What could we do different?
Thank you. Linda Boyd.
Thank you. I've been executive director of the Fargo-Moorhead Symphony since 2007. I was also executive director several years before that at a different chunk of time. And I think tough budget decisions feels like they happen every day. Sometimes you have to, in the interests of what you can afford and what you have the capacity to do, you have to make some difficult decisions. We've cut popular programming, and when times were tough, we go to our community and do what we can to, while cutting expenses, ask our community for more support, and eventually we're adding things back. I think discernment is always an important part of tough budget decisions, and what are all of the elements that weigh into it. These decisions are never easy, but if you have the community's best interest at heart, if you have, it's sometimes a balance between many good players. So discernment and good judgment and truly caring for the future of the community is always important.
Thank you, Ms. Boyd. Tim Flackel.
When I first took over with the Red Hawks and then later on with Tri-College, in both cases they had debt that they'd taken up that really was tough, and I had to pay the Red Hawks, which was a significant amount off in the first year, and we had to make a lot of changes, make a lot of hard choices, do a lot of things while still selling $1 hot dogs. Makes things a little tough at times, folks. And then when I took over for Tri-College, what was happening was they weren't had proper controls in place, and we had to put a bite on that because the International Water Institute, one of our partners, had spent, and the left hand wasn't talking to the right hand, so we had a meeting with the left hand and the right hand, and that got fixed, and we were able to pay that off. But in the legislature, there are billion-dollar deals that I've worked with where you have to make tough decisions and fight for things that are important, that are priorities, that can show either you're on the cutting edge or ones that show that there is a good way that this will really generate outcomes that are important to the taxpayers, families, and children.
Thank you, Mr. Flackel. Tony Gehrig.
Yeah, I feel like all budget decisions are relatively tough. You want to pay your employees a fair wage while at the same time not raising taxes. You want to hire police and fire, which everyone else talks about, but the city assessor's office needs somebody too, and so does, we still need janitors and things like that as well, which isn't quite as sexy as hiring 5 new cops or something like that. So all these and we're going through the budget cycle now. So when we're looking at all of the asks from the departments, you have to say no sometimes, and you end up saying a no quite a lot, actually. This might surprise the other candidates here, but I can be kind of cheap sometimes. And that's why I always ask myself, is this a need or a want? Is this something we have to make the city run, or is this something that would be really nice to have that would be cool? So I ask myself, is this a need or a want? And I also ask myself, if this were my dollar, would I spend it? And that doesn't mean that what they're asking for is bad or wrong, but we have so many needs in our town, and there's so many asks. When you receive those budgets from those departments, they're huge, and you have to cut them down somehow, and that's how I do it, needs versus wants.
Thank you. Now is the time for closing statements, and each candidate will have 1 minute to make the closing statement of their choice. We will begin with Michael Williams and move all the way back to Linda Boyd. Mike Williams.
Yeah, well, I want to again thank everybody for being here. This is a city where we can all make a difference. So I've had the honor of serving for 12 years. We have 3 4-term limits, and I knew that going in, and I never complained. Now, I had to sit out 2 years. I kept on as parking commissioner. I think one of the examples that is best is Rocco Commons. So where we had 7 empty parking lots, the total tax generation was $3,400. On those 7 lots now, we had 190 cars before, now we have 455. We have 70 people living on that same area where nobody lived right on the first phase, and at the end of the 3 phases, we're going to have 210 people living there. We have new businesses on the alley and the sidewalk, so the value has gone from $3,400 just on the first phase to $240,000. When the 3 phases are done and the 210 people are living there and the 30,000 square feet of new businesses are there, the whole total value is $700,000. So you're trading $3,400 on empty economic crater parking lots. Look at Google Map and you'll see parking lots all over this 54 sections of land that we can turn into mixed use and add value.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Lenny Tweeden.
Oh, another issue that I have is I consider that the MAP bus system to be a system in chaos. It has a high employee termination rate. It should be an independent group looking into the MAP bus system. Currently, they have to get the buses from the garage, and they don't have a time clock. They have to call the GTC and tell them they're checking in. And at the end of the day, they return the bus, and they have to call the GTC to tell them that they're done with their shift.
Thank you, Mr. Tweeden. Ms. Preston.
Well, first of all, thank you for holding this forum. And I'd like to say, as a business person, Fargo is a great place to do business, but we have a workforce shortage issue, and I'm going to come back to that again. I do think it's a central issue. There has been a workforce study that was done by the Chamber as well as with a few other organizations in town. I think some of it is being implemented, but it would be important to pull that off the shelf and see what we have done and what we still need to do. I do think the city, it should be a priority for all of us, including the City Commission. The city must run efficiently, and I do, however, believe that we have to be able to invest for the future, and that includes features that would attract a workforce. So those are the things that I would encourage in the City Commission level, and I'd appreciate your vote on June 12th. Thank
you, Ms. Preston. Commissioner Pepcorn.
If you want a vibrant, growing, prosperous city, I would appreciate your vote June 12th. One thing I would hope everyone would consider is how about higher wages? We talk about a worker shortage. It's because we're a chronic low-wage area, so let's consider that. Here's 3 ideas that I have lots of ideas, and I'll share a few of them with you, and that's what I love doing. The first one is economic development director. We should have one. We don't have one. That's ridiculous. You'd pay for that in the first 15 minutes. That's the first thing. The second thing is we should have, with Tim Flackel, the Tri-College, we should have a law enforcement academy. The state highway department, the sheriffs, all the local regional law enforcement are having a shortage issue, and so this would be a great opportunity. We'd be able to know what kind of people they are and hire them and not let them get away. And the third one is the downtown redevelopment. All these blocks that we've gotten because of the flood protection are the cities, and we need to put them out for RFP, and what we'll do with those is make sure that we include workforce housing and low-income housing in those projects. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Pepcorn. Ms. Maddock-Johnson.
Well, 1 minute's not enough for a teacher, so here we go. I got all my notes. One of the things I wanted to go back to was talking about New Americans, and the reason why I brought up police was just because that was about sanctuary school or cities. But really, New Americans, I think, is one underrepresented voice in our community. The other is the LBGT community, and then also women. And the reason why I want to bring that up is because if we can address and have voices from those areas of our city, I think that's going to lend itself to opening our community up to more creative and more diverse opinions on what should be done for the future of Fargo. I brought up residential, and it was brought up here as well in downtown. I'm not down on downtown, but if you look at the incentives that we have given, those incentives have increased the inequality, and we have outpriced people in housing, not just in downtown, but in the city itself.
Thank you, Ms. Maddock-Johnson. Commissioner Gehrig.
There was a discussion about competition before, and I guess I disagree with some folks. I do feel like we are in competition with our neighbors because I want Fargo to have housing. I want Fargo to have more businesses. You know, that helps our entire community doing that. It's not to say that everyone else is bad, but I want us to win. What's one way we could do that? Let me ask you a hypothetical. If you were going to move to this region, whether it's buying a house or buying a business or building a business, and all the cities in the region had special assessments and Fargo didn't, where would you build? And I think it's self-evident you would build here in Fargo. It's a dramatic burden. Rich Madden was on the radio 2 weeks ago with Jay Thomas. Jay Thomas asked him, if Fargo ends specials, what are you going to do? He said, we'll have to end specials too, because he knows that if we end specials here in the city of Fargo, business will be driven to Fargo, and the other areas will have to adjust or risk losing their businesses and homes to the city of Fargo. Ending special assessments will also help end leapfrog construction. It will help people own homes and bring people out of apartments. We have 60% of our people in apartments currently, and I'm out of time, but thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Gehrig. Tim Flackel.
Fargo is an absolutely amazing place to live, work, and play, I guess. But I'm not blind to its shortcomings, and there's a number of things, and Fargo's changing. We need a commission who can change to reflect those emerging needs. My priorities reflect my door-to-door activities over thousands of doors, surveys that you'll have in your own hands. We must finish the diversion and the flood protection. At the state level, I put in, or helped, nobody does it alone, $570 million of state money for that because we need to protect people so they can buy homes, live in homes, buy businesses, work in businesses without fear losing those business. Question earlier was the Convention Center and Performing Arts Center. Convention Center, if you do it, it goes out to the Fargo Dome. Performing Arts Center goes downtown, in my mind, if we do that. And I think I have a broad and relevant experience that has a proven track record and the right temperament to get things done and get them done in short order. I always have and always will put people first, and I want the rest of your life to be the best of your life. And I think almost all of you have my email and phone number, but if you need it, swing up and I'll happily give it to you.
Thank you, Tim Flackel. Linda Boyd.
Thank you. I liked your question earlier about what is your vision 4 years from now, what has changed in the community. And I would like to think, if I were elected, I would certainly be working towards achieving that ideal community where all Fargoans feel welcome, all newcomers feel welcomed and valued, where businesses can find workers and where workers can find the access to education and employment that they need, where housing exists for everyone that meets the needs of all Fargoans, of all income levels. But most of all, I think you would see a city hall that works. We are so fortunate to have a workforce for the city of Fargo that are professional and have integrity, and we need to also value our workforce, and we need good governance. We need people who understand how to work together, how to come up with solutions together, and run the city as well as it can be run, and as well as you deserve it to be run.
Thank you, Ms. Boyd. And so with that, that concludes the time that we have today. I've got a sneaking suspicion for those of you who are in our audience today, if you have further questions, I bet the candidates may stick around and want to visit with you a little bit more. But we want to thank the Fargo, Moorhead, West Fargo Chamber of Commerce for hosting this event. It has been live streamed on our Facebook page, so please share today's information with others. We also want to welcome you to join us for a West Fargo Mayoral and City Commission Candidate Forum, which is going to be tomorrow at 4 o'clock at the West Fargo City Commission. Some of you may know that 50 years ago today, we are commemorating the death of Robert Kennedy. He was assassinated in California when he ran for the presidency of the United States, and he was fond of saying, and quoting an old philosopher, he said, "Give me a place to stand, and I will change the world." Each one of these candidates who is before us today has presented their vision for changing our world of Fargo. We here at the Chamber of Commerce congratulate them for stepping up and taking a stand, and wish them all the best of luck in next Tuesday's election. Thank you, and good night.
Yay.